We have a neighbor that we cannot awake.
What if the person you thought was safe in their own home became the target of a calculated predator? This was the terrifying reality for 91-year-old Mary Bartell.
We rest her place. Is she breathing? We can't wake her up. It's on the way, okay?
On that fateful morning of March 19, as she sat at her computer writing an email to her children, a stranger forced his way into her life, bringing with him a darkness that would change everything. What did Mary witness in those horrifying moments? How did her remarkable bravery turn her into a key figure in the hunt for a suspected serial killer? Stay with us as we unravel a disturbing tale of survival, resilience, and the fight for justice. Mary Bartell had lived a peaceful life in Dallas, Texas, for 4 years, at Preston Place, a luxury retirement community. These places are designed to offer seniors like Mary a safe, comfortable environment with the added benefit of resort-like amenities. But beneath this peaceful setting, a serial killer had been lurking, targeting the most vulnerable members of society. But what made Mary's case stand out was her courage, which finally unraveled a killer's dark spree, shaking the retirement communities that had once promised safety and peace. In the quiet, safe surroundings of a 16-acre gated community, Mary Bartell lived a life of peace and friendship. Known for its security and friendly residents, the Preston Place retirement home had always seemed like the perfect home for Mary. Married for 67 years, she deeply missed her late husband, Don, who passed away in 2015. Despite the loss, Mary stayed active, going to Mass, attending daily exercise classes, and cherishing time with her close friends and family. But on March 19, 2018, everything changed. That morning at 9:26 a.m., a 911 dispatcher received a frantic call from an elderly woman at Preston Place. It was Jackie, Mary's close friend. On her way to pick Mary up for their usual exercise class, Jackie had arrived to find something unsettling. Mary wasn't waiting outside her door like she usually did. Instead, Jackie noticed the door slightly open. Pushing it open, she stepped inside. And what she saw sent her heart racing. Mary was lying completely still on her bed, unresponsive. Jackie, in shock and panic, rushed to her friend's side, trying desperately to wake her. But Mary didn't move. Without hesitation, Jackie dialed 911, her voice trembling as she pleaded for help for her beloved friend. What had started as a normal day had taken a dark, disturbing turn. This wasn't just an accident. It was a sign of something far more sinister. The peaceful community that had always promised safety was now at the center of a horrifying mystery. It is important to note that during this time, across retirement communities in Dallas, elderly women began dying under suspicious circumstances. In total, there were over 700 cases of unattended deaths. The Dallas police initially saw each case as an isolated incident, never suspecting the presence of a serial killer. Could Mary's fall be tied to the string of deaths occurring in retirement homes across Dallas? As EMTs rushed into Mary Bartell's apartment, they checked her pulse, hoping for a chance to save her. Meanwhile, a police officer contacted Mary's son, John Bartel, delivering the shocking news. The family was overwhelmed with fear and confusion, unsure whether Mary would survive or what had caused her sudden collapse. Despite her age, Mary, at over 90, led an active life, working out regularly, maintaining a sharp wit, and staying socially connected. She had no significant medical history to suggest something like this would happen. Then something unexpected happened. Mary stirred, regaining consciousness. Slowly, she raised her hand and motioned to the police officer at her bedside. Her gesture was subtle but significant. She pointed to her finger. Her wedding ring was gone. This small detail was shocking. According to her son, John, Mary never removed that ring. She wore it everywhere, while sleeping, bathing, and during her daily activities. If the ring was missing, something was terribly wrong. The EMTs and police began to realize this wasn't just a medical emergency. It was a sign that Mary had been targeted. The missing wedding ring was a critical clue, indicating that this was no accident. Could it be connected to the unsettling rise in suspicious deaths among elderly women across the Dallas area? As the mystery deepened, it became clear that Mary's life and the lives of others were entangled in something far more sinister than anyone had imagined. Now Mary and Don were the ideal high school sweethearts, and their love story was like something straight out of a movie. To their children and grandchildren, their bond seemed destined to last forever. Since Don's passing a few years earlier, Mary clung tightly to the memories they shared, especially her wedding ring, which she never took off. When John Bartel, Mary's son, and the family learned that her ring was missing, alarm bells went off. This wasn't like her. They searched her apartment high and low, hoping to find the cherished piece of jewelry. But not only was the ring missing, all of her valuable jewelry had vanished too. That's when Sergeant Brian France began to recall something chillingly familiar. He remembered a bulletin from Officer Chapman about thefts involving deceased elderly women. Over the years, hundreds of elderly women had passed away, some under questionable circumstances, and many with personal belongings, especially jewelry, missing. Yet no one had ever connected these dots. France had a sudden realization. This was bigger than they thought. As Mary Bartell was rushed to the hospital, clinging to life, the investigation took a sharp turn. Mary's survival was not only crucial for her recovery, but also for unraveling a much larger and more sinister mystery. Investigators started revisiting other cases that had a haunting resemblance to Mary's, and that's when they stumbled upon the case of Helen Lee. 6 months before, in the summer of 2017, Helen Lee had experienced a similarly creepy situation. The unsettling pattern was becoming clearer, and with it, the horrifying realization that Mary's case wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a disturbing trend that spanned years. Now Helen Lee, 82, had been living in the Parkview Frisco retirement community for 5 years. She had made a peaceful life there, enjoying time with her friends and frequent visits from her beloved granddaughter. Helen, a seamstress for over 45 years, found comfort in her close-knit group, including her best friend, 90-year-old Marilyn Bixler. The two women were inseparable, constantly spending time together, whether for lunch, dinner, or simply catching up. Living just floors apart in the same building, they had formed a bond that made their retirement years feel full of joy and companionship. But despite the community's reputation as a well-established and secure place for seniors, there were gaps in its security. The stairwell remained unlocked, and there were no surveillance cameras to monitor who came and went. By early September, Helen and Marilyn's routine was shattered. On Sunday, September 3rd, Helen's granddaughter grew concerned when her Grammy didn't show up for church. She went to check on her, only to find Helen lying motionless in her bedroom, her cane at her side. Law enforcement quickly assured the family that Helen had likely passed from a heart attack, a conclusion they didn't question at the time. Not long after, Marilyn Bixler was also found dead in her apartment. Both women were in their late 80s, and their deaths, though heartbreaking, weren't entirely unexpected given their age. Authorities chalked up the events to natural causes and decided not to perform autopsies, a decision that, at first glance, seemed reasonable. However, in light of what was happening with other elderly women in nearby communities, the deaths of Helen and Marilyn would soon raise more questions than answers. Were these really just natural deaths, or was something far more sinister at play? At first, no one could imagine who would want to hurt senior citizens, but something felt off to the families of Helen Lee and Marilyn Bixler. Both women were found lying perfectly straight, as if someone had carefully positioned them. Family members also noticed unusual bruises on their arms, and in one case, a pair of glasses was found twisted completely backward. Yet nothing was done. Helen's daughter recalls asking the police if they thought someone had hurt her mother. However, the response was discouraging, as they told her that her mother had died naturally and that someone had just happened to rob the jewelry off her cold, dead body. This explanation did little to ease her suspicion, especially after she realized that her mother's cherished ring, which she never removed, was missing. As similar incidents continued to surface, the local police were forced to look deeper into these unsettling events. A disturbing pattern emerged. A string of elderly women had died under similar circumstances, each one missing valuable jewelry. From wedding rings to gold necklaces, even a Rolex watch. The total worth of stolen items exceeded $500,000. The coincidence between the timing of these deaths and the disappearances of the jewelry was too alarming to ignore. With a new sense of urgency, authorities began to realize these deaths weren't just isolated incidents. They pointed to something far more sinister. As investigators looked back, They discovered that normally, Tradition Prestonwood, the retirement community where many of the women lived, experienced only about 3 deaths a year. Yet with the recent surge in fatalities, it became clear they were facing a calculated and cold-hearted predator targeting the most vulnerable. The troubling deaths of senior citizens between 2016 and 2018 quickly escalated into something far more frightening. What began as isolated incidents soon revealed a disturbing pattern: hundreds of unattended deaths, many tied to only 4 luxury senior living facilities. Jewelry theft became a glaring issue, with families realizing that their loved ones' most prized possessions had gone missing right after they passed away. The magnitude of the situation was alarming. Despite the growing number of suspicious deaths and thefts, the management of the retirement homes appeared unsympathetic. When the families asked for answers, they were met with dismissiveness, particularly from Edmundo Sanchez, the community relations director at Tradition Prestonwood. His indifferent attitude only added to the family's suspicions. When asked about the missing jewelry, his response was unsettling. "These old ladies hide stuff in their underwear drawer sometimes." This lack of concern left the families frustrated and distrustful. Taking matters into their own hands, the residents started posting warnings about the jewelry thefts, asking others to lock their doors and remain vigilant. However, their efforts were swiftly shut down by management, who claimed the posters caused unnecessary alarm. This move only deepened the sense of something being seriously wrong within these communities. The dismissive attitude and quick removal of the warnings painted a chilling picture of a place where safety and justice seemed secondary. After years of mounting complaints and suspicions, police finally began taking action in the fall of 2016. Edmundo Sanchez was brought in for questioning. His casual and cold responses only heightened suspicions. Investigators turned their attention to the retirement home's surveillance systems, only to find major gaps. At Preston Place, for instance, there were no cameras monitoring the 3rd or 4th floors, leaving many areas vulnerable to intruders. This lack of security made it far too easy for someone to slip in and out unnoticed. Sergeant Davis, growing increasingly suspicious, remarked that something felt off and that something about the situation wasn't right. However, despite pursuing every possible lead, including questioning paramedics, the investigation hit a wall. There was no physical evidence, no clear suspects, and no arrests were made. The case was effectively closed, leaving families and authorities without closure. Everything changed when Mary Bartell was rushed to the hospital after a similar incident. Her case had strange similarities to those of the past 2 years, but there was one major difference. Mary survived. Her survival could provide the crucial answers needed to finally unravel the mystery behind the disturbing deaths and thefts troubling the retirement communities. Could Mary's case be the key to solving what had evaded investigators for so long? But before we find that out, we have to know what exactly happened that day. On that seemingly uneventful Monday morning at Preston Place Retirement Home, Mary Bartell was sitting in her apartment typing an email to her children. Around 8:30 a.m., there's a knock at the door. It's nothing unusual. Mary expects it to be a neighbor or perhaps a staff member checking in on her. She rises from her desk, unlocks the door, and just as the click echoes in the quiet room, the door flies open with force. A tall man pushes his way inside, catching Mary completely off guard. She tries to slam the door shut, but his strength overpowers her. Panic floods her as she notices something chilling. He's wearing green rubber gloves. Towering over Mary, the man grabs hold of her, pushing her frail body aside effortlessly. She struggles, tries to fight him off, but at 91 years old, she's no match for his physical strength. Desperately, Mary reaches for the life alert button around her neck, her one chance at getting help. But before she can press it, the man pins her arm down, cutting off her last hope of rescue. Her world goes dark as she loses consciousness. Moments later, the silence is shattered by the sound of the door opening again. This time, it's Mary's friend, arriving to pick her up for their daily workout. Her friend, sensing the urgency of the situation, then calls 911, praying that help arrives in time. As the paramedics work swiftly, a miracle occurs. Against all odds, Mary opens her eyes. With great effort, she gasps for breath and urgently relays a detailed description of her attacker to the police. Now armed with this crucial information, detectives launch a thorough investigation, canvassing the retirement home for any potential witnesses. They quickly uncover multiple reports of a suspicious individual fitting Mary's description, seen lurking around the premises. One witness recalls seeing a man on the fourth floor, claiming he was there to check for pipe leaks. The description is precise: 5 feet 10 inches, 180 pounds, dressed in a clean suit, and carrying a satchel. Coincidentally, on the same day and time as Mary's attack, police received a call about a stranger walking around the retirement home parking lot. Concerned for the safety of the residents, the caller noted the suspicious man's license plate. When police trace the vehicle, they discover it belongs to a man named Billy Chemirmir. At 46 years old, he matches Mary's description perfectly. Billy presents himself as a medical professional, at least that's what it appears to be on the surface. Security footage reveals him moving seamlessly between roles: a nurse, a plumber, a maintenance worker. He seems to blend into the fabric of the retirement community, gaining the trust of the residents while hiding a sinister agenda. The detectives now find themselves on a collision course with a suspect who could be the key to unraveling the disturbing pattern of crime that has haunted this community for far too long. Now detectives begin to piece together the unsettling tactics employed by Billy Chemirmir. He gains access to various facilities using random uniforms from his past jobs, coupled with the presence of unmanned doors, making it all too easy for him to slip in unnoticed. The police decide to take a closer look into his background and discover a pattern of suspicious behaviors. Delving into his criminal record, they find DUI charges, but the most alarming detail is that Chemirmir was arrested for trespassing at a retirement home back in 2016. He had posed as a maintenance worker to gain entry into elderly residents' apartments. This raises a chilling possibility. If he is indeed a killer, he has had access to medication, keys, and the most vulnerable citizens among us. The shocking realization hits the detectives. He could potentially have over 700 victims and is still walking free. What they know is that Chemirmir is difficult to catch, frequently changing his appearance, jobs, vehicles, and even identities. He moves effortlessly between 4 different retirement homes, evading capture by authorities time and again. Tasked with the difficult job of apprehending someone who seems to have mastered the art of invisibility, all police resources are now focused on finding him at any cost. A suspected serial killer is on the loose, and the clock is ticking. It's now March 20th, 2018, just one day after Mary's horrifying attack. The suspicious vehicle from the previous day pulls into a nearby Walmart, a mere 5.7 miles away from Mary's apartment. The store is equipped with security cameras that cover every corner, allowing detectives to monitor his behavior for hours. At precisely 2:30 p.m., the surveillance footage captures Billy walking through the store, seemingly calm and collected, unaware that his every move is being watched. This could be the breakthrough the police desperately need to bring him to justice. But Billy Chemirmir is fixated on one person in particular, an elderly woman dressed in red. He mirrors her movements, shadowing her through the aisles of Walmart for over 20 minutes. As she casually finishes her shopping and heads back to her car, unaware of the danger lurking behind her, the man remains hot on her trail. He follows her out of the parking lot, unnoticed, expressing the terrifying reality that one could simply be going about their day and yet be stalked home by someone with malicious intent. Fast forward to 5:50 p.m., hours later on that same day, when police finally spot Billy's vehicle. According to their descriptions, the driver fits the profile perfectly. The officers begin to tail him as he enters an apartment complex, heart rates rising with the hope of finally cornering their suspect. The tension escalates when Billy stops in front of a dumpster, exits his vehicle, and casually discards something inside. While some officers continue to track him, others rush to investigate the dumpster. As they sift through the contents, they make a startling discovery: a beautiful, bright red jewelry box that appears to have been broken into. Though some valuables remain, the most significant find is an old name tag nestled inside the box, along with a document. The name reads Luty von Harris, giving the investigators a sudden wave of recognition. This isn't just any jewelry, it is potentially linked to one of Chemirmir's victims, a reminder that each piece of evidence could unravel a web of crimes that spans years and hundreds of unsuspecting elderly women. The pieces of the puzzle are slowly coming together, but the hunt for justice is far from over. As police quickly search the name found in the jewelry box, they identify an 81-year-old woman living less than 2 miles away. Time is of the essence now. A decision is made swiftly to conduct a welfare check on Luthi Harris. One of the neighbors noticed the officers and asked if everything was okay. The officer responded that they were just there to check on the welfare of the lady who lived there. The neighbor reassured them that she should be fine, mentioning that he had seen her at the post office around 4:30. Despite this reassurance, the officers, trusting their instincts, decided to force entry into the residence. As they rush inside, a sinking feeling envelops them. They are too late. Tragically, they find the lifeless body of an elderly woman who matches Luthi Harris's description. The officers notify the family immediately. Luthi's granddaughter, Karen Wong, senses something is terribly wrong when her father unexpectedly picks her up from university. Karen recalled how her dad had picked her up, crying uncontrollably. He had told her that he had something important to share, and the pain in his voice mirrored the growing fear in her heart. Reflecting on her grandmother, Karen remembered how beautiful she was, always dressing up, with a smile that was childlike in its innocence. The overwhelming horror of the situation had left Karen terrified, constantly triple-checking the locks and ensuring no one was following her. Initially, Luthi Harris's apartment appears unremarkable. No signs of a break-in, no suspicious details. Yet, due to the earlier discovery of her jewelry box in the dumpster, the urgency in the search for the suspected serial killer skyrockets. Authorities realize they're dealing with someone who has not only committed robbery, but may have taken innocent lives, and the pressure mounts to stop him before he can strike again. The police, determined to bring the suspect to justice, track down Billy Chemirmir outside his apartment complex in Dallas and make the arrest. The evidence is overwhelming, linking him to the murder of Luthi Harris just an hour prior to his capture. He was then held at the Dallas County Jail, facing a capital murder charge. As he's escorted into the police station, he is placed inside an interrogation room. When confronted with the gravity of his actions, Billy fakes innocence and confusion, trying to maintain a calm behavior. However, the detective lays out undeniable proof of his guilt. In Chemirmir's apartment, investigators uncover several cell phones, rubber gloves, and even a printed passport for an alias. The police also find an alarming amount of jewelry in both his vehicle and residence, all belonging to previous victims. This evidence connects him to multiple suspicious deaths, heightening the urgency of the investigation. To build a stronger case, police reach out to local pawn shops and jewelry sellers, showing them a picture of Chemirmir in hopes of gathering additional evidence. One owner at Diamond and Gold's Exchange immediately recognizes him as a regular customer, appearing frequently on their security footage. The owner recalls that Billy would be laughing and shaking hands, noting how Chemirmir portrayed himself as a legitimate buyer and seller of jewelry, claiming to acquire items legally. As the investigation deepens, authorities discover that Chemirmir reportedly made over $100,000 selling stolen jewelry through various pawn shops, diamond stores, and even online marketplaces like eBay. However, investigators suspect this number is just the tip of the iceberg, hinting at a much larger network of crime that they are only beginning to uncover. The hunt for justice intensifies as they piece together the chilling puzzle of Chemirmir's actions and the lives he has destroyed. In April 2022, Billy Chemirmir faced a second trial for the murder of Luthi Harris. Following a mistrial in the first case, the prosecution focused on the compelling evidence against him, despite his alleged involvement in at least 18 other murders. Chemirmir pleaded not guilty, but the courtroom was filled with families of victims, deeply impacted by the case. The trial began with the powerful testimony of 91-year-old Mary Bartell, who had survived an attack by Chemirmir the day before his arrest. Her detailed account provided crucial evidence, bringing attention to the horror faced by elderly victims. On April 28, 2022, the jury convicted Chemirmir of capital murder in just 45 minutes, bringing a sense of relief to Lou Harris's family. In the following week, families of 22 victims delivered impact statements, allowing them to address Chemirmir directly. On October 7, 2022, Chemirmir was convicted again, ensuring he would never harm anyone again. After this conviction, the other charges against him were dropped, which left many victims' families feeling disappointed. But Chemirmir's life ended on September 19, 2023, when he was killed by his cellmate, Wyatt Busby, at the Caulfield unit in Texas. Chemirmir was 50 years old at the time. Busby, who was serving a 50-year sentence for a 2016 murder, allegedly attacked Chemirmir after Chemirmir reportedly made inappropriate comments about Busby's children. For the victims' families, the road to healing remains long, but knowing Chemirmir will never harm anyone again offers some comfort. Mary Bartell's legacy lives on, embodying courage and inspiring those who knew her. Though she passed away in 2020, her memory serves as a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit. How do you feel about the way justice was served in this case? What can communities do to better protect their elderly members? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon.